Hello, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Welcome to this episode of Olivia's Corner. Today I'm talking about D&D stuff. I am struggling to come up with a way to tell y'all about my plot without telling you about my plot, because there are massive spoilers in the plot if I tell it to you. Like, there are threads from episode 1 that have not been revealed yet. So instead of telling you all of the plot of my D&D campaign, since my players are still playing through it, we're going to talk about my experience DMing a little bit. So I've talked about my inspirations for my world in other settings. So like creating my world of my TV show that I want to write someday. Someday soonish, I suppose. I talked about being inspired by... I have one of his books. Martin, whoever wrote Game of Thrones. I always say J.R.R. Martin, but I'm not sure if that's right because I always think Tolkien. Now I'm thinking J.R.R. Tolkien. Is that right? So I've talked about those people being inspirations for the world that I've created just because they create massive and wonderful and thorough worlds that are very well loved. But I'm sure there are other things, as you can imagine, that have inspired me. Things like Critical Role, which I talk about all the time. The world of Harry Potter. I have had to create 2 schools recently. 3 schools in my world. One for magic, which I strongly drew some references to some professors, at least, in Harry Potter. One that's like a fighting school, and it's a boarding school, and I drew some of my references from like orphanages in movies. So like I watched The Queen's Gambit a couple of months ago, and that's a very well done show, and there's an orphanage in it. So I drew some inspiration from... These are the kinds of professors that live in a boarding school from both Harry Potter and that show. One of the reasons I wanted to get into D&D and writing for television and film is that I feel like this is a wonderful way for me to say that everything I've ever watched, played, read, ever counts as research. I have been inspired by different mediums and movies and TV shows, and while all of my professors say I can't be a good writer if I'm not reading all of the scripts, I don't have access to the scripts of things I actually enjoy, so to some degree watching it still helps me a little bit until I can get my hands on scripts for TV shows that I love. I may have covered this concept before, but I want to talk a little bit about why I wanted to be a dungeon master. I love world building. If you can't tell by the 12 Get Ready With Me videos that are literally just me building a world, I had to start somewhere. Part of this all is that I started building a world when I started watching Critical Role, and I knew I wanted to be a dungeon master when I watched Matthew Mercer be a dungeon master. I love that he was spinning stories for other people to play and participate in, and the worlds that he was creating are like legendarily wonderful. Like, so many people watch Critical Role not just because the players are amazing, which I could tell you about all day, but because Matthew Mercer creates an immersive world and people love the non-player characters, the little side quest characters that are involved in his world. They're also essential. There are shirts themed after his like shopkeepers in their store. I loved that Matt had an opportunity to create a world that filled in some of the holes in our world. I kind of talked about this a little bit in my Why the Hell Should You Watch / Play D&D video, just that all of the things that you dislike in the world you have an opportunity to fix in this other world. So like in my world, there is a ton of LGBTQ representation and like a whole bunch of variances in the races and breaking away from the way that heritage impacts how people see other characters. And I just wanted to create a world that was more inclusive and welcoming and flawed in a way that my characters could counteract if that's something they're interested in working towards. One of the things I've struggled with is that it's not realistic to make a perfect world, obviously, because no worlds are perfect, and there's nothing to do in a perfect world. Like, everyone's just happy. You're just living out, like, your fantasy of how wonderful the world could be. It's not engaging for a storyline. Something bad has to happen. Someone has to be a problem or cause a problem. I don't believe people are problems. I wanted to create engaging villains and places and things that my players could engage with. And I love when they do engage with those things. Some of my most reactive players, like, I love when there was a character, like in the first arc of the story, which I can kind of talk about, where there was a murder mystery and the players investigated the murder mystery, but the person behind all of it was not who they were expecting. And when they discovered that it was him, he kind of pulled a gotcha on them, and my players were like completely furious, and it was wonderful to watch. It was wonderful to see them chasing down this character. So, engaging villains that people don't like. I like villains. You can like a villain and still understand that they're doing something wrong. Another aspect of DMing that I'm still kind of getting used to or working towards or around or with, I guess, is that recently my players were going in a direction and they went physically in the opposite direction I was expecting them to go. And as a dungeon master, I was very prepared in one direction and vaguely prepared in the other, and they chose the vague direction. So I watched a little Q&A, I suppose, with the dungeon master of Critical Role, Matthew Mercer, and he was talking about exactly that, rolling with the punches, expecting his players to go one direction and them going completely the other. And it was really affirming for me that someone who I greatly admire has the same problem that I do, where exactly what I just said, that they're going a different direction than he expected, and he kind of has to just roll with the punches. And he saw it as this wonderful, beautiful thing, and that he loves when his players surprise him, and I guess I'm gonna start working on that direction. I don't know how he does it, that he just has things prepared everywhere that they go. I'm not there yet. I've also found that when my players go somewhere where I only have a vague understanding of what the location is, there are some pros and cons. It definitely tests my ability to improvise. Recently I borrowed a tavern / an inn from another continent because they went to a place and I was like, I think there's supposed to be a tavern here. That would make sense, but I don't have a tavern here. But it also just makes the world feel more real if they can go wherever they're thinking of going, and it's like there's people there they can interact with, and that those people are moving and changing and growing. That's one of the things that my good friend who is a DM told me as well, that when the world feels real and there are consequences and things are time sensitive and things move forward according to time, it makes the world more immersive. I also watched a video recently, per the request / recommendation of one of my coworkers, about power escalations, I suppose. So one of the things I'm grappling with, I guess this is a little insight into my DM brain, is that one of their concepts was that you don't need to, there doesn't need to be a god battle in the end. So they were talking about leveling up how the challenges affect the players and what kind of challenges they're facing without leveling up the actual, without breaking the way that magic works or that power happens in the system. Anyway, I think that's enough of my prattling on about D&D things. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Me. Thank you for showing up, I guess. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button below so that you get notified when I notify you. Please feel free to comment about things you'd like to see in the future, things that struck you about this video, or anything in between. Anything you hate or love about what I'm talking about. Yeah. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.